Hello, golf fans. Chris Durrell here with DailyFantasySportsRankings.com to bring you a DFS PGA cheat sheet tutorial video. Before we get started in that, if you're not a DFSR member yet, make sure to get over to DFSR.com. If you click on the player lab here, you're not a member yet, you're going to see our sales page where you'll be able to get in. We have two different price tiers on here. Scroll down to the bottom, we'll have a look here. We got Classic is $14.95 to get you stats for every sport, to get you our members only chat room, plus it gets you my DFS PGA cheat sheet. If you want to take it one step further and get the optimization tools, you can create up to 50 lineups in NHL, NBA, NFL, and MLB. It's $29.99 per month, and signing up for either one of those plans right now, you get a 7-day free trial. Every single week on DFSR.com, I do a write-up for the current tournament. You can find that on the homepage just by clicking Other. That will be labeled as PGA in the coming months, but right now that's where you're going to be able to find it. You can get in. I break down the course, talk about some core plays in each price range, as well as my core stats as well. And then for the rest, you can find it on the DFS PGA cheat sheet. I have rankings up to 20 to 25 players that are in my player pool every week. I label them cash, GPP, and value plays, as well as some news and notes on those as well. And then, of course, in rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4, I will also have a showdown sheet moving forward for PGA product as well. So get over to DFSR.com, sign up today, let's win together. Let's get into the cheat sheet tutorial video. So as I mentioned in the intro here, I'm going to be going through my DFS PGA cheat sheet, just showing you a little bit about it for anyone that's new, possibly a refresher for those of you that have been members for a while now. I've been using my sheets for a while, are familiar with some of it. I've added a few new things. I'm planning on adding a whole bunch more, so I will be redoing this video once I get some of that stuff in. I'm also going to go a little bit through the DFS PGA round 1 showdown sheet that I have for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, just to kind of give you some insight to some of the things that I've added for showdowns and some things that I will be adding as the rounds go on there as well. So let's just get started. First of all, if you're wanting to make your own copy of the cheat sheet, I know there's a lot of you out there that do want to do this to either adjust the models inside the cheat sheet. What you're going to need to do, or even if you just want to sort the columns, if you want to sort by FanDuel, you can't do that right now. It's a view only. So what you're going to want to do is go up to File, click Make a Copy, name it whatever you'd like here. As you can see, I just named it a copy of the regular cheat sheet, and click OK. It's going to open up another version. It's going to be an editable version for you. So that'll allow you to sort sheets. So if you want to sort FanDuel pricing, I just click somewhere in that column D, and then I go up to data and sort Z to A, which is highest to lowest, and now we're sorted by FanDuel pricing. So you can do that anywhere. For instance, if you wanted to, again, now if you want to sort by official world golf ranking, which is this column G, you click anywhere in that column G, go up here. Now for golf ranking, lower the number is better, so we want to sort Z to A this time. So we're now looking at this sheet in terms of players ranked by official world golf ranking. So you can do that for any column on the sheet if you want to see maybe who's ranked, who did well here at this tournament last year. We can go back up to data here and sort A to Z. So here's your leaderboard. So on the sheet, you're going to see many things. We've got player information, so of course we've got DraftKings salary, FanDuel salary, odds, official world golf ranking, and then I've got DraftKings points averages for the last 2 and last 5 events. I know some of you wanted me to get FanDuel in there as well. It's just a little tougher. With DK, you can actually download a CSV after the tournament and get those points easily, where I've built a pretty big database now, 2-3 years of sample size. But the problem with FanDuel is you can't download that unless you want to go through player by player and get that information. So as of right now, there is no fantasy averages for FanDuel, something I am definitely looking into in the future. Salary to odds differential. So this is just a ranking of odds to win versus DraftKings salary odds versus FanDuel salary odds, and then over here just kind of just a little bit of a look at the difference between the two. So for instance, we'll kind of pick one that stands out here a little bit. We'll just go down the list here. Here's one here. Okay, so we got Billy Horschel. He's 25th in odds to win. As of this was updated on Tuesday afternoon. He's 37th and 36th in DraftKings and FanDuel pricing. So there's a little bit of an edge there. Of course, everything in these columns, green is going to be good, red's going to be bad. Like you're looking at Martin Laird here. He's 54th in odds. He's 40th in FanDuel salary, 46th in DK. So a little bit better pricing on DK, but still negative value in terms of salary to odds differential there. So that's kind of how I look at that. Usually I key in on this a little bit more once we start getting down into the 7 and 6K range. You really find some players that do stand out there as possible values on one side or the other, or sometimes possibly both. So then we move over into the blue range here, and that's going to be your course history. So for courses where there's just one course used, like this week, TPC Scottsdale, we've got the last 5 years here. And I always, if there's a 2-course rotation, 3-course rotation, I'm going to label that up top here just so you're going to be able to see that, what we're looking at. And then we just got average. That's just average finish over the last 5 years with the results here. And a missed cut can sometimes be hard to pick out, but what I wanted to do was, instead of just putting MC for missed cut, I actually wanted to weigh that, because I believe there is a difference in missing the cut by, say, a stroke, 2 strokes, versus missing the cut by 7 strokes. So just a little bit more weight, say, on a 7. These are missed cuts, obviously 76th and 82nd, but they're not nearly as bad as, say, some players down here you start looking at finishing 120th, 118th, 113th. So just puts a little bit more weight on that in terms of course history. And the same goes for form. I do the same thing. Instead of the missed cut, I'm ranking the whole field 1 to 156, or however many players are in that field. So then we move into the green section, which is going to be your raw stats. And by raw stats, I just mean this is the actual stat, like your actual driving percentage, your actual driving distance, not the ranks. We'll get into the ranks shortly. That's how we are going to make our models. So we've got strokes gained, first of all, and that's where a lot, I would say probably 60% of my model comes from every week, is these strokes gained stats. I really like them. Some tournaments, we can't quite use them. They don't have the shot tracker out there to be able to give us that information. But some of the stats do, and most of the time now we're getting into this fold of the season where strokes gained is going to be very relevant. So you got strokes gained total. That is a total of, off your tee, approach, around the green, putting. It's your whole entire game. And then we break it down tee to green, which includes off the tee, approach, and around the green. And then off the tee plus approach is your strokes gained ball striking, and that's this column AF here. That's one that I use very highly each and every week. What I've done a little bit more this season is, instead of trying to tweak the model with 7 or 8 or 9 different stats each and every week, I try and keep it fairly simple each and every week, and just kind of tweak 1 or 2 different stats depending on the course and what players I think are going to excel on the course there. So then beside that, we've got the putting stats. We've got putting average, which is putts per greens in regulation. We've got 3 putt avoidance. We've got putting inside 10 feet, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and putting over 20 feet. That's more for visual reference for me. The only ones I really like to put in my model on a given week would be that 3 putt avoidance on, say, very large greens, very undulated greens as well, where we possibly see a lot of 3 putts throughout the year. So that's where that comes from. Then we've got driving distance, driving accuracy, and good drive percentage. Pretty straightforward here in terms of distance and accuracy. The good drive percentage is a combination of your driving accuracy plus greens in regulation that are hit when you do not hit the fairway. So it's kind of a good indicator on tournaments where you're only seeing about 50 to 60% of the field hitting the fairway. Good drive percentage is something we're definitely going to want to look at. It's players that maybe do well from the rough, and that coincides with the approach stats here, rough proximity. So I kind of look at good drive percentage and rough proximity together when it comes to courses where guys aren't going to be hitting a lot of fairways. So yeah, we got greens in regulation, overall proximity, fairway proximity, like I said, rough proximity, and then we got the distances. If you want to actually break down, if you're at a tournament where there's going to be a lot of long iron shots, very long course, we're going to want to look at proximity from 175 to 200 and 200 plus yards. And then we jump into the scoring stats: par 3, par 5, par 3, 4, and 5 scoring. Par 5 birdie or better percentage, which does include a little bit more eagles. So if you get a tournament where there is a lot of eagles, all 4 par 5s may be reachable by the field. We really want to, separate ourselves with 1 or 2 eagles during a week in terms of fantasy scoring. That's one column that I would look at. Overall scoring average before the cut. So that's something we can definitely use, in terms of showdown. I'm also going to be adding round 1 and round 2 scoring to this as well, now that I'm doing showdown sheets. And then we've got round 3 and round 4. Bogey avoidance overall, birdie or better percentage, which is going to be huge most weeks. Looking at tournaments where the winning score is going to be minus 12 or lower, definitely birdie or better percentage. Looking at tournaments where you can get into a lot of trouble, you can give strokes back to the field, maybe a lot tougher course, U.S. Opens, that sort of thing. I'm definitely going to be looking at a little bit more bogey avoidance versus birdie or better percentage. Then at the end, you got your around the green stats, the actual scrambling number. I prefer to look at strokes gained around the green versus scrambling. And then we've got sand save percentage here if you're looking at a course with a ton of sand. And then just next to that is just in the orange here is the rankings of each one of those stats that we just went over. Now I put it into rankings so that we can actually build a model off of these stats and put it together each and every week. So as you can see right now, in this would be row 3 in the orange, that's where I put my weights. So right now 20% on strokes gained approach, 10% on strokes gained off the tee, 5% on around the green, 5% on good drive percentage. Then we've got par 4 scoring average, birdie or better percentage, both at 25%, and then par 5 birdie or better at 10%. And that all equals this 100% here. So if you're coming in and making your own model, you've created your own copy, and you want to adjust this a little bit, say you want to go birdie or better percentage down to 15, so that takes us down to 90 here, so we need 10 more, and you want to put maybe 10% on bogey avoidance, you can definitely do that. I try to keep that as 100. So that's our stats model. So then, beside that is the overall model. So we have our stats, which just ranks the model that we just did with all the stats. And I've got 40% weight on stats. And then we've got course history, 15% on course history, and that's just ranking. Going back over here and looking at the course history, this is just ranking the average over the last 5 years. Same with current form in the next column. And same with DK point averages. The last 5 is the one that I use. I will be adding into next week's sheet the last 2, the last 5, and then as we get more into the season, I'm going to add the last 10 DK points there as well, so that we can just kind of have a look at a short-term, mid-tier, and then some long-term success in terms of players that help us figure out different trends. If a player's maybe trending in a good direction, just more the information the better in terms of trying to decide between players, because we do have a large field of players every week with PGA. So then once we get that, these 4 here, CY to DB in yellow here, I also want that to add up to 100, and then that gives us an overall rank looking at stats, course history, form, which is just average finish, and then DraftKings scoring. I've got that set a little bit higher. Normally I'm probably going to go that at 30, form at 15, and then form down at 10, because there are some players that do stand out. Cameron Champ is one of them that has stood out. I do have another sheet I am working on right now, and it's DraftKings points ranking compared to finishing position. And you get some players that make a lot of birdies, they do make a lot of bogeys. They're getting finishes, say, in the top 30s, but their DraftKings scoring is higher than some players that are, maybe finishing top 20, who are getting a lot more pars, a lot less bogeys, but a lot less birdies in there as well. So I really feel that we want those guys that are going to be scoring those DraftKings points with birdies and bogeys. We can definitely give up. Now it all depends on your which sheet you're looking at, whether it's the overall tournament sheet versus the showdown, because in showdown it's definitely a lot more important to concentrate on birdies, because rounds 1, 2, and 3 do not have finishing position points. It's just strictly the scoring points, and you can see that I've also got a tab here down at the bottom, it's in purple, called DraftKings scoring. So it's comparing the regular, the showdown, and the weekend golf. So as you can see here, looking at birdies, 3 points for a birdie for weekend as well as regular, but 5.75, so almost double the points for birdies in showdown. So that's where I'll really create my model on the showdowns, and I'll put a lot more weight on birdie or better percentage versus some of the other stats. So some of the other tabs here at the bottom, while we're going through that, we've got the course, which is just a little look at the scorecard, and then I break down the par 4s into lengths. And we've got course history, so this is the last 5 years course history, place and score of each player. And then we've got the scorecards, the actual scorecard with all the player scores added up and together, looking at this. So what I really use this for is not just to see which holes are going to be the most difficult, like as we can see here at TPC Scottsdale, the par 5s are by far the easiest. This little stretch of 16, 17, or 15, 16, and 17 is the easiest stretch on the course. So I'm kind of looking for trends like that. And then down here, how many eagles are being scored on the tournament? So there's a lot here. That's why I'm looking at par 5 birdie or better percentage versus just par 5 scoring. And then we can see the distribution of birdies between the pars 3s, 4s, and 5s. So while it's only 36% of the birdies come from the par 5s, you have to keep in mind there's only 3 par 5s on the course. So par 5 scoring, you're going to need to score there. If you can get an eagle or two during the week, I think you're going to put yourself ahead. But in terms of this tournament, I'm definitely looking at par 4 scoring as the separator, because those are definitely the hardest holes in a place I think a player can separate themselves from the field. So that's there for all 5 years as well. Then we've got player statistics. These are for all the players that made the cut that week. Then we're looking at the average driving accuracy, greens in regulation, average birdies per player for the tournament, and then I just kind of look at the last 5-year rolling average of what the driving accuracy was and what the greens in regulation was, just for kind of figuring out the stats model at the start of the week. So you can use that for your research as well. Then we've got the targets tab, not filled in here. It is filled in on the member sheet, which you can find in the chat. And I will have up to 20 players here, with cash, GPP, value play, pricing for both DK and FanDuel, and then there's also some notes that I will add in here as well if anything stands out to me, stats over the last 10 rounds. And I do use fantasynational.com for more of my current stats. Going back to the main cheat sheet here, when you're looking at my stats rankings here in green, the raw stats, this comes from another sheet where I'm looking at a combination of this season stats as well as a more long-term model looking at last season stats. So at the start of the year when we start the fall season, I'm almost 100% looking at 2018-2019 season stats. And then as the tournament progresses, or as the season progresses and we get more tournaments sample size in there, I start expanding a little bit. Right now, for instance, I'm at 80% 2019-20 stats and down to 20% on 2018-19 stats. So as we get into probably into May, June, I'm going to be almost 95% on the new season stats. And that's coming along as well. I'm working on a database where I can start breaking down last 5 rounds, last 10 rounds, last 15 round stats as well. So that's something that's to come in the future as well. So that is everything that goes into the sheet itself. On any given week, it takes me I start setting this sheet up usually right after lock on Thursday. Going into the next week, I start doing the course history, and then once the current tournament's over, I'll go and I'll update all the stats and the official world golf ranking and the DraftKings scoring. And then Monday morning is when I'll go in and I'll add the DraftKings and FanDuel salary and the odds, and I will adjust my stats model. During this time, I add a ton of stats, trends, course history, notes, news and notes and stuff like that on players in the chat leading up to it before I release the sheet. Then the sheet comes out and I start filling in my plays Monday night, Tuesday, and then I usually have it finalized by about 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Like I said, you can check that top targets tab. And if you're ever wondering, like on here, I'm going to have, say, players labeled John Rahm in blue, Justin Thomas in blue. I believe I got Webb Simpson. He's going to be a core play for me this week. You can always find the legend here. So green is core plays, blue are GPP plays, yellow are value, and this is the same between every sport that I do a cheat sheet for. It's the same legend. It's the same way that I label them. Purple would be cash games only. I just don't feel like their upside is there, but I feel they're good for cash. That would be kind of like a player, maybe a terrible putter. Let's just go and look at one right here. So Corey Connors is one that stands out to me. He makes a ton of cuts. He's got top 25 finishes. I believe he's made 6 straight cuts, all top 20 finishes. The upside is somewhat capped for him as that price starts to rise, just because his putting is well below average, which really caps that upside in my opinion. But his elite ball striking gets him making cut after cut after cut, which I definitely like for cash games, being that he's below that 8K range. Once he would start to get up into that mid 8K to 9K range, it's a little bit different story and have to look at things a little bit closer. But that's kind of why I would label some guys cash games only versus, say, like a core play. So that pretty much covers everything. Like I said, if you want to get the copy of the cheat sheet, with all my highlighted plays. I've got the targets tab updated as well. Like I said, I have that fully updated by Wednesday afternoon. Definitely get into the chat, get your copy of the cheat sheet, and before we get done here, I'm going to jump over and just show you round one, what I did here. So obviously round one is going to be first round leader bet in terms of odds, looking at that here. Rest of the sheet is all the same. DraftKings salary is obviously different, and then what I've done is I put in the tee time wave, just because, you know, depending on the tournament, we can maybe get a bit of an advantage, whether it be a weather advantage in the morning versus the afternoon wave, or a 3-course rotation. I always label the courses, which players on which course each round, so you're going to be able to see. Then I'll go ahead and highlight my plays again that I like for Showdown. But like I said, when it comes to Showdown, I would suggest you don't have to make a new copy, because I'm going to do this automatically, and I'll just show you what I'm going to do right now, because this is the actual DFS PGA Round 1 Showdown sheet for the Phoenix Open, so you will be seeing this video come out before the Phoenix Open lock hits. So what I'm probably going to do here is take some emphasis off par 4 scoring, which I think can help a player separate himself from the field. And now that would be more of a full tournament thing, a player that does well over those par 4s. So I'm going to reduce that down to 15, and I'm going to take the model up to 35% birdie or better percentage. I'm going to put more on the stats here. I'm going to go 50% on that, and I want, you know, in terms of form, I'm probably just going to crank that right down to 0, and then we can go right up to 35 in terms of DraftKings scoring there as well. So a little more emphasis on birdie or better percentage, which makes sense. There's no finishing position points. There's no cuts to be made in round 1 Showdown. We want as many birdies as possible from our players, and the least amount of doubles and bogeys and stuff to capitalize in cash games there, and GPPs. I generally play cash games for Showdown, and it just comes down to one, I've just been more successful at it. 2 is a timing thing. I don't have time to put together 3, 5, 20 lineups. I just like to make one lineup each and every day, run it in a bunch of cash games and a couple single entry GPPs, and that's the way I roll for Showdowns. It's been very successful to start the year. So that's how I create that model in terms of the Showdown sheet. And if you have any questions on either of these sheets, definitely reach out to me in the chat on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9. Or just leave a comment in this video below and I'll get back to you for sure. Thanks for checking out the video, and let's go out there and get some green screens this week at the Phoenix Open and throughout the entire season. Good luck, everyone.